Here are the 7 vital tips for getting your first wholesale deal.
Tip number 1, use the MLS to find houses in a distressed condition and distressed situation. And I had to put this as tip number 1. I know you know this by now, but so many people are going to go after properties that don't need major repairs, that have everything that's new on it. But we're looking for properties that have that old electrical wiring, that have those cracked slabs, that have the fire damage, that need the new flooring, that need the new cabinets, needs the new bathrooms, right? Because these properties can be purchased with all cash. And if a property has to be purchased for all cash, then it's usually a great property for an investor. And it's important to understand the average home buyer can't buy this property because the average home buyer needs to get a mortgage on the property. And if a property is in distressed condition, that average home buyer can't get a mortgage on the property because it's too risky of an investment for a bank to lend on it and to give a mortgage on it. And then we need properties in a distressed situation. So divorce, death in the family, short sales, so pre-foreclosure, properties that have actually been foreclosed on. The seller needs to move quickly. The seller lost their job. There's dozens and dozens of other reasons, but we extract that information through that discovery call. All right, so most newbies don't target these properties and will compete against first-time home buyers and on a brand new property, and they'll wonder why, hey, why doesn't this work? But we know it works because we go after properties that are in a distressed condition and in a distressed situation. So be sure to understand this tip. And tip number 2, ferociously pursue properties with the status of active. This is very important. So on the MLS, on Redfin, there's properties that have different statuses. So active, contingent, pending, sold, expired, withdrawn, and canceled. So we as professionals, we ferociously pursue active properties because it means that property is currently active for sale. And you have the highest likelihood of getting a property with the status of active under contract versus any other status, right? If a property is sold, it's already sold. You can't get it under contract. If a property is pending or contingent, it means it's already under contract. So active means a seller is willing to sell their house right now, and the seller of the house and the listing agent are currently accepting offers. All right, so very important. And a quick ninja tip too, some MLSs, some Redfins will show you that, hey, there's BOM, back on market properties, which means this property is back on the market and active. It was contingent or pending, it was under contract, now it's back on the market, so ferociously pursue those properties as well. Now tip number 3, so many students and myself, we've wholesale deals successfully because we were the first one to call on a deal. And now if you can't be the first one to call on the deal, it's completely fine. Calling on the deal as soon as possible is still important. So for example, being the second person or third is better than being the 10th, 11th, or 12th. So remember, be first, speed is the name of the game. And tip number 4, always remember the list price is flexible. So many newbies think that if a property is listed for $510 on the MLS or on Redfin, that it has to sell at that price. That's absolutely not the case. And let me give you an analogy for this. So if I want to go buy a used couch on Craigslist.org, right, a marketplace, if I find a couch that's listed for $600, but I don't want to pay $600, I want to pay $400, then what am I going to do? I'm going to offer $400 for this couch. Now what can the seller do? They can accept it, they can counter it, they can reject it, right? So in this case, I'm negotiating. I'm offering where I want this couch to be. I'm offering at the price that I want to buy it. So it's the same thing on the MLS, on Redfin. Just because it's listed at $600,000 doesn't mean you need to offer at that price tag. You need to offer at the price that works for you. So back to the Craigslist analogy. If the couch is $600 and I offer $400, let's say that seller is willing to sell it and just says yes, or maybe they say, hey, you know what, $425. You do $425, we make it work. Then perfect, I'm negotiating and we're able to then come to a price that works. So a lot of times you'll see on Craigslist, someone will list something for sale, but then they'll put OBO next to it. And that means or best offer. That's how you need to look at every listing on the MLS. There's going to be a price like $510,000 or best offer, OBO next to it. So you need to offer at the price that works for you. Now, tip number 5 is to focus on relationships over transaction. So every discovery call you make is an opportunity to develop a relationship with a listing agent. And people remember how you make them feel, not what you say. So make listing agents feel important because they are, and the listing agent is in control of the deal. Now, here's an important stat. According to the National Association of Realtors, the typical seller has recommended their agent once since selling their home, and 20% of sellers recommend their agent 4 or more times since selling their home. So this is very important to understand because let's just say we're calling on a property that's in a distressed condition, distressed situation. We find out that the seller has lost his job and that this company has done 1,000 layoffs. Let's say the seller's name is Bob, likes working with this real estate agent, and we get this property under contract and we wholesale it. Then let's say Bob's friend who also worked at the company also lost his job and needs help selling his property. So he talks to Bob, and Bob says, hey, you know what? I use this agent. I'm gonna refer my agent to you. Now, because we have a great relationship with the agent and we closed the deal, we did what we said we're going to do, the agent likes working with us, who do you think the agent's gonna go to next, right? Well, according to the National Association of Realtors, the typical seller, Bob, will recommend their agent once, and then 20% of sellers will recommend their agent 4 or more times selling their home. So with that knowledge, with that data, the relationship is so important. If you have a relationship with that agent, then chances are they're gonna list another fixer-upper, and if that agent likes working with you, then why wouldn't they wanna work with you again? And that's how one deal, one relationship leads to many. So what I want you to do with this tip is strive to develop long-term mutually beneficial relationships with listing agents. Remember, one deal leads to many. On-market deals can actually lead to off-market deals. Do not be transaction focused, be relationship focused. Now, tip number 6, this one's extremely vital too. Written offer sent is the most important KPI, key performance indicator. So many amateurs think that sending a text or leaving a voicemail, having one phone conversation, or sending an email or saying an offer price for a house verbally is considered an offer sent. And this is where a majority of wholesalers, newbies, and real estate investors go very wrong. So for us as pros, a written offer sent is actually getting that written contract back from the agent and then signing it and sending it back to the agent. That is the best thing. That is the best KPI. Because now at that point, all the seller needs to do is sign the dotted line and we have a deal under contract. So if we take two investors, the amateur and the pro, let's say this amateur only makes verbal offers, never sends any written contracts, and they send 100 verbal offers in a month. Hey, I'll buy the house at 500,000. And the agent's like, okay, let's get a written offer in. But let's say the professional gets 100 written offers in, knows what he's doing, fights to get the written offer in, gets 100 written offers in. So all the seller needs to do is sign the dotted line. Who do you think is gonna get more deals? Verbal offers or written offers? I'd bet all my money on the guy who is submitting, or the girl who's submitting written offers. So that distinction is very vital for you to understand, because where most people suffer and quit is they'll send the text message saying, hey, I'll buy the house for 500, and then it doesn't go anywhere because they don't talk to the agent, because someone else sent them a text and they don't have any rapport with the agent. So always get that written offer. And what my business partner Ryan likes to say is that an offer isn't real unless it's in writing. So that's what I believe to be true too. So written offers is the most important KPIs. A written offer is going to beat a verbal offer every single day of the week. Now, tip number 7, what you need to understand is that every no you get gets you closer to a yes. So there's something, I'm not sure if someone else created or whatever, but I like to call it the law of no. And my belief, my personal belief, is that the most successful people get the most no's. And so when you get rejected, when you call agents and find agents that don't want to work with you, when you submit offers and that offer price doesn't work, you're that much closer to then getting a deal done. When you put a deal under contract and you don't know what you're doing, and you put it under contract way too high of a price, but you're protecting yourself with a back-out clause, and now your cash buyers tell you, no, you don't want this deal. Guess what? You're closer to that yes. So what's important to understand is there's no such thing as failure in life, in real estate, and what we do here, there's just feedback. So instead of failure, there's feedback. And what most people do is they confuse quitting and stopping, and stop working towards their goals, and stop submitting offers, and stop making calls, and stop analyzing properties. They call that failure, but all they really did was quit. Instead, what we do is we take it as feedback. So if a listing agent says, no, hey, that offer doesn't work, well, what price does work? I'm just getting feedback. If I get a deal under contract, my cash buyer says, hey, you know what, that price doesn't work. Well, what price does work, right? I need to know. What most people do is they stop there, they quit, they say, hey, this doesn't work. But probably by now you've seen enough people do this and actually wholesale deals, and actually then go on to be awesome real estate investors that fix and flip property while still wholesaling, and then reinvest their capital into buying and holding rental properties. So why not you, right? And the only difference here, this tip, why I put it last, because we accept that every no that we get is closer to a yes. And I want you to embody this too, because this is not only going to help you in real estate, this is going to help you in every single area of your life. Every single area. So if you embody this, as you can understand, this isn't just real estate, this is also personal development. When you look at failure as feedback and not as actual failure, then you're going to continually improve and get closer to wholesaling that first deal, and probably actually wholesaling.
Be sure to get our free downloadable resources in the description down below. And if you want to build a hyper-profitable wholesaling and flipping business, then check out my full in-depth training at realestateskills.com/watch. I'll see you there, and happy wholesaling.